Okay, we are on the final kind of content lesson for booklet 1. So we're looking at lesson 15, how did people deal with the Great Plague of London 1665? So obviously when we think about plagues, we think of the Black Death, which happened in the medieval period, so 1348, and they then have a plague in London in 1665. So just to kind of make sure you remember, you've got some key facts over here. So the Black Death of 1348 claimed the lives of about 40% of the population. Now, if you think back, people didn't know what to do. They resorted to praying, to thinking it was miasma, all those things that you would have done in your Black Death lesson, the box in which you had to number. So if we just go back quickly. All of these that would kind of give you an idea of what people thought caused the Black Death. We're now thinking we need to make sure that we know that. So if you want to go back to that page now and revise that quickly before this lesson, feel free and do that. Now, before this lesson, you would have been set by your class teacher a homework piece, and that is essentially just sort of revision around that. So just to kind of give you the sort of questions here: what year did the Black Death take place? What were the 2 supernatural causes of disease? You've got 10 questions in which you are looking at some information, and you do need to do this before you do this lesson. So looking at these sources, thinking about what did people think caused the Black Death? The Great Plague, for question 6 and 7, and then you're looking at these 2 sort of images over here and thinking about, what changed? What did the mayor do? So in terms of the government, so if we're thinking about factors of medicine, what did the government do to stop the spread? Now, what a time we're living in which we can think about directly. We know exactly how important factors of medicine actually are, which brings me on to this. So what methods are the government taking to prevent the spread of coronavirus? So to get you into the kind of mindset of understanding how disease works, how kind of government policy works, pause the video, just have a think about, what are the government actually doing? Think about what they're doing in school, think about what lockdown is, think about, your daily lives when you go to the shops, think about what you have to wear. Those are all sort of policies or orders in which we follow to stop the spread of coronavirus. Okay, now, not saying that this is like the plague or anything, but when we think about the Great Plague, so this image over here, we need to think about, okay, what can we learn about people's ideas about illness and health? What can we see from here? What can it tell us about the story so far? So we've got 2 people picking up what we can assume is a dead body. You've got someone who's perhaps dead or unwell. You've got a door with some religious sort of writing on it. You've got these people wearing masks. Now, just in case you couldn't see it in the homework, you can pause this slide right now to finish that homework off if you are doing it now, or if you want to go revise it. Feel free to email me if you're in year 11 and would like to do that homework as a revision piece. I can send that to you. These are, again, different orders. So if we look over here, some orders that they did, so just like how we have to wear a mask and hand sanitize, and we can't leave our house, we can't mingle, a lockdown, they're all things that we are being told by the government in the Great Plague, 1665. This is what people were told to do: sweep the street outside their doors every day and wash down the area twice a day to prevent dirt, kill stray animals, pigs, dogs and cats, because they thought that it could be carried onto their skin. Cart collected dead bodies. People searching to check the plague was the cause. People shut up in their homes. Watchmen standing guard to stop anyone going in or out. You've also got these 3 individuals here. So watchmen were put in place 2 were pointed to make sure no one left or entered an infected house. A searcher who had to look for bodies, make sure that those infected had died of the plague, and an examiner to find out who actually had the plague. Now, what you are doing for today's lesson is thinking about what was done to help stop the plague. So how do people deal with the Great Plague of London 1665? And what we're doing is we're comparing across the two. So on your worksheet over here, in your book, you have some information about the Great Plague that you have to read through. You then also have to use your information on what you would have just seen from this PowerPoint or the homework. Pause it on the video, on the section of the video where I looked through the orders. And I want you to fill in this box over here, this table. So the Middle Ages, not a lot of writing space, so feel free if you are out of space to kind of write a few in your summary, do an asterisk. So you're looking at explanation for the plagues, prevention, so what did people do? You can find that information here for the Renaissance. And treatment, what do people do? Again, you can find that here. There's also a lot more that you can put in the Middle Ages, so feel free to add that information as well. You then have to look through this box over here. So many of the ideas about the plague from the Middle Ages continued in the Renaissance. Find at least one example from the homework sheet for each explanation offered about the cause of the plague. So even then, you don't even need to look at the homework sheet. You can have a look over here and get that information from there. You can also have a look at the sources that I have shown to think about what are people doing in terms of religious sort of perspective. So this idea of they put a cross on the door for anyone who had the plague if that people knew not to go in. And you should eventually be looking like this. So once you have finished, you can press pause and just double check that you've got those answers down for that first table. Okay. So finally, very, very quick lesson. All you have to do is write a paragraph that explains one way in which people's reaction to the plague in Britain was similar in the 14th and 17th century. The paragraph must include language that compares and contrasts and specific factual evidence. Now, we've just plopped this in there in this book, but this is actually an exam style question. Okay, so I'm going to just go over how to kind of quickly write this. So you would get a question in an exam, and this is 4 marks, that asks you to compare something. So the first thing you need to think about is you need to identify, well, what are they asking you to compare? So it's asking you to compare people's reaction to the plague, okay? It's not asking you to compare causes of plague. It's asking you to compare how did people react? So how did they treat things? How did they try to prevent things? That's what reactions mean. So I'm just going to write in here that we're looking at treatments / prevention methods. Did people really know what they were doing, essentially? So it's also asking you, so this exam question would either ask you to tell me why something is similar or tell me why something's different. So it's saying that it's asking you, why are things similar? Why are they similar in the 14th century? So obviously we know they're talking about the Black Death. And the 17th century. And that's exactly what you need to do when you see this type of question. It's an entry sort of question to section B, so it's easy, but you need to make sure you know what the focus of the question is and what time periods are being spoken about. So write a paragraph that explains one way in which people's reaction to the plague in Britain was similar in the Black Death and the Great Plague. Now, to get full marks, you need to make sure you have language that compares and contrasts. So if you were talking about something that's similar, you may use connectives like similarly or this can also be seen in. If you were talking about something that was different, you could write down on the other hand, contradict, in contradiction, something like that. So obviously you need to think about what connectives would you be using. Now the way that this looks in this sort of exam, this section here, I've actually done the first bit for you to an extent. So you are really only doing the second part. And your question needs to make sure, your answer, needs to make sure that you have language that compares and contrasts. So you need to identify what is similar about it. Why are they similar? You need to analyse that. And specific factual evidence from both time periods. Okay, so we've this bit's already been done for you. Essentially, there was little difference between people's responses to the plague during the 14th and 17th century. Many medieval people placed their trust in lucky charms to deal with the plague. For example, holy relics were placed around the neck of sufferers to ward off the plague. Now, they're talking about charms. Now, once you've done this lesson, you should be able to know, well, what other sort of superstitious like things did people do to react to the plague? So it says, likewise during the Renaissance, which is its comparison sort of sentence. You then have to have a look. So over here, it says here, some people wore a charm with the word abracadabra etched onto the amulet. Others believed that they could draw the poison from the plague sore by placing the feathers from the tail of a chicken onto the sore. The illness would then be transferred to the chicken, with the belief of transference. You would then write down how that is similar. So you would give me some factual evidence from this time period and explain how it's similar. And that would be it. Okay? This question's all about being really specific with your detail and really comparing the two. Once you finish that, this one has already kind of, this one's talking about people's reactions. The next one is looking for the causes of disease. Okay, so again, I want you to use the same format, but think about, well, why did people think it was caused by the same? And to kind of help you in that, I want you to think back to that picture that I showed you here. What did people think caused the plague originally? And what do people think now? Think about the homework that you've been set, and the sources that you would have read in that homework. These two. What did people think caused the plague in the Great Plague, and what's the difference, or how is this similar, to the Black Death? So attempt those two questions, and then we're done with this lesson.